to your attention that the latest actions from the international community, it didn't come until they have seen that there is no go back for the Libyan people, because they thought maybe Gaddafi will take over very quickly and stop these people from protesting or uprising. But eventually, when they saw that the reality and the situation and the sacrifice that the Libyan people gave to free their country, they thought they have to act right now. And I believe they have to consider a very limited, guaranteed action if they want to do an action against Gaddafi's regime. They have to make it clear it is for a significant action which is going to be very specific, limited time, and also one target, not to stay in the country anymore. So it is very confusion, but they have to make sure that the Libyan people first, the Libyan people will be first in the country, not to stay in Libya. I know it is a very, very hard decision to be made, but this is the people's choice.
All right.
They said a lot of Libyans, they said they would die fighting Gaddafi rather.
Peggy Hicks, if I could just turn back to you for the final word on this in the minute or so that we have left. With events seemingly moving in the right direction, as you see it, against Gaddafi's regime in Libya, do you fear, though, that in the interim there will be much more bloodshed to come, because many people see him as a sort of a cornered animal that is willing to fight to the death at all costs? Do you fear for the Libyan people in that respect?
Well, I think this argument that he's been backed into a corner is something that we've had to fight against, actually. Gaddafi is in a corner, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, he's gotten by with impunity for all these years. The fact that he's now facing accountability isn't going to make him any worse. As your own questions showed, it's not as if the lack of accountability changed how he behaved over these years. But what it will, we hope, do is send a message to those around him that they should not engage in more bloodshed. Yes, there's a risk, but we're desperately hoping, of course, that that message gets to the right people and that they recognize that they don't want to stand with Gaddafi, that they won't fire on civilians and they won't take those types of actions. All
right, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank all of our guests for taking part in the discussion. Peggy Hicks in Geneva, Azeldin Sharif in Manchester, and Tariq Youssef here in Doha. Many thanks for your time. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments, your opinions and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.
Business Latest is brought to you by Catalum, the most efficient and environmentally friendly aluminium smelter. Business Latest is brought to you by Catalum, the most efficient and environmentally friendly aluminium smelter.
On the next Riz Khan Show, as social revolution sweeps through the Middle East, how marginalized has the US become, and how will this affect its future role in the region? Riz Khan, at this time on Al Jazeera.
It's the right ingredients, in just the right amount. It's 729 layers and several well-spent hours. It's when 1 degree too high is too high. 1 minute too long is just too long. And then you remember, this is just the appetizer. A 5-star menu on board Qatar Airways. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello there, welcome to the News Hour live from Doha. I'm Shuli Ghosh. It's 1800 GMT and from Al Jazeera News Centres here in Doha, in London and in Washington DC. These are the main stories. The son of the Libyan leader says it's calm in the capital, but news of protesters on Tripoli's streets say otherwise.
I'm Felicity Barr in London. I'll have the very latest from Europe, including the international community steps up the pressure on Muammar Gaddafi at the Human Rights Council in Geneva.
I'm Nick Clark in Washington with more of the US response to the unrest in Libya. Plus,
I'm very concerned by the alarming reports of continued violence in the country.
the UN humanitarian chief says the situation in Libya is extremely volatile and calls on Gaddafi's regime to stop killing its own citizens.
Plus, banned from travel and his assets seized, Egypt's top prosecutor makes a move on ousted President Hosni Mubarak. And saying no to a unity government, Yemen's opposition turns down an offer from the president. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi is clamping down in his stronghold Tripoli and appears to be preparing to move against opposition-held cities. The crisis is right on his doorstep, with reports of hundreds of protesters taking to the streets of the Libyan capital. Security forces apparently fired into the air to scatter the demonstrators, and earlier gunfire broke out between anti- and pro-Gaddafi supporters in the city of Misrata. Lawrence Ridley reports on developments from other parts of the country.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that if a town only half an hour from Tripoli is in the hands of protesters with tanks, then the end must surely be near. Yet the days drift by, momentum ebbs and flows, and for the time being, Gaddafi's regime has enough to avoid falling to the people's uprising. Given the routine way in which Gaddafi's armed forces have been switching allegiances over the last few days, one of the questions that keeps being raised is how are the Gaddafis maintaining a fighting force? Up until now, the chief spokesman for Gaddafi has been his son, Saif al-Islam. He has routinely accused the media of lying about the fighting, maintaining Libya is entirely at peace with itself.
The point that you are hearing rumors, false reports, please take your camera tomorrow morning, even this night, go to every city in Libya. Everything is calm, everything is peaceful.
And yet this has now emerged. The same man, semi-automatic in hand, exhorting people to fight for his father.
I'm here to raise your morale. They are spreading rumours that our police and security forces are joining the hooligans. It's not true. Today we'll show them that the police are siding with Libya. I'm bringing you reinforcements, resources, food, weapons, everything you need.
Discounting the irony that Saif al-Islam Gaddafi has warned about the prospects of civil war while seeming to arm a militia is the question of the extent of Gaddafi's regular military forces. This is the Bainin air base, said to be one of the most important in the country. The military here say they've joined the uprising.
The whole base responded to my call to join the People's Revolution. We have great staff. As military personnel, we want to be clear that this is not a military coup. We are not leading anything. This is a people's revolution led by the youth. Our role is to protect and support it. That's our main aim.
While the Gaddafis offer arms to civilians, their former army in eastern Libya has left behind a fearsome arsenal, now in the hands of the insurgency. They say they're trying to look after it in case children get their hands on it. It also promises to provide them with a massive buffer against a Gaddafi fight back. So the east of the country does now appear far more stable, and attempts are being made to suggest a country after Gaddafi. But there's still nervousness about a civil war, not least among poor migrant workers who, many days after their bosses, are finally getting out.
Here is facing war and here is going on war, so we are afraid, everybody is afraid here, what maybe we can die and die.
Away from the headline towns, it appears that little places are quietly realigning themselves, and in a small country that could be genuinely significant. This Facebook video is said to be from Zintan, southwest of Tripoli, near the Tunisian border. Enough men with arms here to protect a fuel convoy. And this video, also from Facebook, is from a tiny-looking place called Kakla al-Jabal. They raised the flag of protest here unnoticed, but it's another community lost to Gaddafi. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, Hoda Abdelhamid is in the city of Benghazi. Hoda, Benghazi, of course, in the hands of the protesters. But logistically, how likely is it that they could take the fight now to Tripoli?
Well, I think if you're asking about logistically, it will be quite difficult, simply because on one side they have to make sure that they have enough people to protect their own city, and on the other hand, even if there are many volunteers who are willing to go to Tripoli, to reach Tripoli is a very difficult, long and dangerous trip. They will have to go through certain areas like Sirte, considered a stronghold of Gaddafi. That's where his paramilitary elite forces are based. They do expect that there would be a big fight. If they try to take another route, that will be through the desert, a very long and tiring journey before actually managing to reach there. And also they have they have to also worry about aerial bombardments. If they're on the road, they're alone, they're uncovered, they become a very easy target. So I think it is a very difficult mission. From what I understand, and I spoke to several groups who are preparing themselves, they are at the moment in the preparation mode. They're willing to do it, but they're not moving yet.
OK, so what are the plans for protest leaders there in Benghazi? Because they formed a national council, haven't they?
Yes, they did form a national council, but I would think that this is just the very beginning of this national council. This is a country where no one had really any kind of experience in leadership, governance, administration, or anything like that, because it was all held in the hands of the government and these popular committees who basically are loyalists to Gaddafi. So they are doing their best to form themselves, to organize themselves. I think they're at the moment more of a representative body. They want to be a point of contact with the international community. They also want to sort of give an official face to this leaderless uprising so far. They are trying their very best, but from there to see them starting organizing life and bringing back civilian rule is just going to take a little while as well, because none of them actually knows how this government works.
And if there are fears that Gaddafi's forces may try and retake towns and cities which are held by opposition, how well are protesters prepared to face that onslaught? How well are they armed, for example?
Well, they are armed because a lot of the weapon caches were left unprotected, so they got a hold of the weapons there. I saw people along the roads with heavy weapons, anti-aircraft guns. They do say that they also have a few jet fighters and a couple of helicopter gunships. They do have the army commanders on their side. They have a lot of foot soldiers on their side, but certainly the other side, and we go back again to these paramilitary elite forces, are much better equipped and have certainly a superiority, in that sense. However, people here tell you, well, we managed to do it in the early stages of the uprising. We managed to kick them out, and that was just with the willpower of the people, and we'll manage to do it again.
Hoda, thanks very much indeed for that update. Hoda Abdelhamid in Benghazi there. Let's speak to Tariq Youssef, who's a senior research fellow at the Dubai School of Government, who joins us in the studio. First of all, reports of protests in Tripoli. How far does it seem that Gaddafi is losing control?
Slowly, but gradually. We've seen in the last couple of days a trend of more and more neighborhoods, more and more locales reporting clashes with the paramilitary troops, some of the security forces that remain in Tripoli. This suggests that time is not on the side of Gaddafi and is on the side of the people of Tripoli. And that would hopefully take out of the equation any attempts or any thinking on the part of the eastern part of Libya to